This is a topic that I've been wanting to dive into for a while. I've written a little bit on it in that there's all these programs and things around well-being,
Mm,
especially for workplaces, but in general, like everybody wants to be well. We want to feel good. But one of the problems I have with it, or the challenges that I have with it, is so many of the things related to being are about doing, not being.
ooh,
And
yeah,
so they're like doing yoga or doing a diet or doing meditation or doing, and I'm not saying those things are not good. So do not get me wrong, those things are
right,
good.
of course, absolutely.
But the challenge that I see, and it's even in the word itself, being is about how we're being.
Mm,
And being is a state, right? It's our ways in which our patterns and practices and ways in which we're being.
mhm,
And there's a difference between consciously choosing to do something and when something's just part of the ways of our being, the ways that we do things, the ways that we operate.
yeah,
And I think when you see some people, everyone's different, everyone's going to have different patterns and ways of being and ways of operating. And when we only focus on the doing, we give the impression that if we just do it, we'll be well.
hmm,
And doing it doesn't necessarily create the wellness or the well-being in and of itself unless it becomes part of our being, unless it becomes part of how we're being or the ways that we're doing things. Does that make sense?
yeah, because then to me too, I'm thinking about our last conversation and how, like, the nervous system can get riled up. So if you are doing, but you're not consciously being while you're doing it, like, that's where the issue comes from, right? Uh-huh,
Yeah. And we're in
mhm,
a consumer like driven
yeah,
world
yeah,
where it's like, what can I buy? What can I do?
mm.
What can I capture to fix it? And I'm like the worst offender here.
Yeah,
I will buy
trend are a thing. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yep,
How
yep.
can I fix this? How can I make it go away? But if it were about that, here's where the science comes in a little bit. If I know that eating healthy is good for me,
Yeah,
and I feel that it's important to be healthy. I want to feel good. I want my body to not hurt.
yeah.
Maybe I even do try to buy the healthy groceries or get the healthy meal ideas and recipes. But it's not part of the ways that I'm being, the things that are just part of my ways of operating. Then I may do it for a little bit,
Yeah.
but I probably won't keep doing it because something else is going to my regular pattern is going to prevent me. It's going to cause me to shift back into what's most natural.
It's so true, and this might not be the same example, but I'm like, I keep ordering the same, like, starter salad pack from the grocery store. I got it, and I was like and we threw it away last time because nobody's eating it. I'm not eating it, but I keep buying it because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, it sounds good. It's like a super salad blend. I should do this," and the last time I threw it away, my 20-year-old daughter was here, and I was like, "Oh, I'm throwing this away for the 2nd time." She goes, "Or 3rd or 4th, mom."
Yeah, and I use that health example because I feel like everybody can relate or most people can relate to some degree, but there are some people where eating healthy has become part of their ways of being,
Mhm.
where they don't even think about it, it's just what they do.
Yeah.
It's just how they exist.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's certain habits or things that, like, we do have. Do we have all the things in the super greens? I test my pH. I know all of that, but I think to that point, it's like integrating something new too, right? Because we're so hardwired to do the same things and have the same stuff around us all the time, right?
Y Knowing is never enough.
Yeah,
Feeling gets you
knowing is never
closer,
so. Yeah.
doing gets you in the vicinity. But
Yeah.
true
Yeah.
change, lasting change doesn't occur until it's embedded into your ways of being, until it's a pattern and way of practicing and living your life. And that's where habits can be really helpful, like habit practices. I think that's why, James Clear and his Atomic
Yeah.
Habits is
Yep.
so popular,
Favorite.
because if I can do something often enough, I create that neural pathway. I create that
Yeah.
pattern
Mhm.
in my system.
Mhm. Mhm.
The challenge, the way that I look at from a neuroscience perspective is that there's these different intelligences in our body. And I attribute that to the different neural networks. So I'll often talk about, of course, our head brain has a neural network. Our heart has a neural network in it. It's much smaller, but it does have this set of neurons and it performs
Yeah.
function. And then our gut has a set of neurons, and our gut serves as a brain.
Yeah.
And each of those has these like independent functions. And when they're in conflict with one another, even with habits, it can be really difficult to create a new pattern or a new way of
Yeah.
being.
Mhm.
Especially if the structure or environment, place and where we're existing
Mhm.
hasn't changed. And that's where it's really easy to fall back into your standard patterns or your standard ways of operating and ways of being.
No, absolutely. So my brain goes, okay, and even thinking about like us as well-being, but that overflows to us in work and how we show up and what we're doing. So I think of like how the person that is in a corporate job, right? Or owning their own business, really everybody. If we're disequilibriumed inside, right? Whatever your fancy neuroscience word would be for that, right? If those things aren't in coherence, like it's going to affect how we show up on all playing fields in our life, right?
Yeah, so I call it wisdoming, and I
Wow.
call it when we access our multiple intelligences, so we get in touch with our head, our heart, our gut, and our
Yeah.
different intelligences, and then we align them. We bring them together so that they're in agreement, they're in
Mm,
alignment, and it's when we do that and then apply it that we start to shift and change our ways of being. We apply it to our practices. We apply it to the different things that we have in our lives or the experiences that we're having. And I'll use one of my examples. Like I use the health example. This one's very real to me. I know without a doubt that science shows that movement is essential, that
mhm.
moving the body, not necessarily exercise, just movement is really important to neurological function, to your brain operating well, to your neurons firing. So that's part of why Apple Watches and things like that will tell you to stand up once an hour or things like that. It's
Yeah,
because that movement gets the cells moving, the blood pumping so that
yeah,
you get refreshed cells to your brain and to your different neural networks that then allow them to operate better. So I know this to be true. Okay.
mhm, yep,
And even though brain health is so important to me, and I know how important it is, and I know that it matters, it's frequently more important to me to get one more thing done than it is for me to
mm,
get up and move.
that's
I
so
want to
yeah,
finish that course I'm writing, that book I'm writing, that chapter, that article, that thing. I want to get one more thing done. Because in my patterns and practices, getting one more thing done is more important to my heart than getting up to move. And
oof,
so it wins.
it does win, right? Absolutely, that's huge. That's it's amazing, that there's your neuro nugget.
So if you really want people to be well, this is my thing. We have actually access to the things that can make us
Yeah,
be well.
yeah,
And many of those things cost nothing.
yeah,
Okay. Yoga's great. I love yoga. One of my partners is a yoga therapist. Like, I love it. It's fantastic. But just moving, just walking, just
yeah,
making one choice of eating one thing or another. There's so many things that cost nothing. Being in nature, we talked about that before,
yeah,
breathing well.
yeah,
There are so many things that we don't have to buy, we don't have to spend money on that can help
yeah,
us to be well.
yeah,
The thing that's getting in our way
yeah,
is not access to the resources or things we need to help us to be well.
mm,
It is the practices and the ability to change our ways of being, our ways of doing and accomplishing things in a way that allows us to be more. So, an example of that, to put it in real terms, is if I use my movement example, if for me, achievement is really important to my sense of self and
Mhm.
to feeling like I got enough done in a day and that's value, I've got to unwind why that's so important
Mm.
and how to accomplish that and also accomplish taking breaks so I can move and walk around and do other
Yeah.
things. And if I don't do that unwinding, if I don't do
Mhm.
that work, then it doesn't really matter if I have every exercise machine on
Hmm.
the planet or every tool that I could possibly have, or even have the permission from my employer to get up and walk or take breaks. None of that is going to make me do it.
Yeah, 100%. That's the secret sauce of all of it. So, is there, I love the unwinding and wisdoming. I love all of those words, the things. So, what would you say to me or somebody that has that same thing? Like, how would you unwind? Like, from a science way, so from, and I know I feel like it's a broad question, but what would be one thing that you could tell somebody? Like, I think even awareness. So, go ahead.
Yeah, so awareness is important. I can bring
Mhm.
awareness to it. But this is where what I would say is a lot of people make a lot of money off of giving you processes, steps, answers.
Mhm.
The challenge is that the answer, the what to do, is inside of you.
Mm.
And so the approach that we use to accessing those multiple brains, to getting into those ways of being, is actually not me giving you wisdom on anything. Same for me. No one can come in and tell me, do these things if you do this, because I'll do it for a little while.
Right.
I might even turn it into a habit for a couple months,
Yeah.
but it probably won't last. And
Yeah.
we've all
Yeah.
experienced that,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yep. Yep.
probably won't last.
Yeah.
And so, if you really want to make lasting shifts, you have to get into what are those messages? What is my heart feeling about it? What does my head say about it? What is my gut communicating with me about it? And bring them into alignment to get to the wisdom that you need, the unique answer for you.
I wrote
And
that down. I love that. Yes.
and it's that's challenging, right? Because I can't package up your unique answer and sell it to a bunch of people. So
Yes.
in a commerce productized world, it's not a solution in a bottle
The
of
answer.
answer, but we're too complex.
Yeah.
We're living ever changing complex human beings.
And then at the same time, my brain goes, that couldn't be any freaking simpler. Right? Like, that is amazing. Because you think about, I always tell the people I coach to and work with, because some of them like they want, as our friend Teresa says, the answers to the test. And I'm like, I can't give you that. It's in you. Like you, we have to work through, like I always joke about the Wizard of Oz. Like it's already in you. And as cheesy as that is, though, it's so true. So I love that. So we always want to give people something to apply. So we might come up with something else, but I feel like that is a beautiful thing for people to think about right now. Like when you start to think about what is the thing that's winding you up or the thing that like the achievement in you that's wanting you to get one more thing done. What is it, right? If you can make that shift, right? What's your heart saying? What's your gut saying? Like, how do you get it into alignment? That's that visceral. Oh,
Starts with awareness.
yeah.
Awareness is always the beginning. If I become aware of it, then I can start to recognize
Mm,
what's contributing to it.
mhm.
So for me, I'll keep using my example of movement. For a long time, I wasn't even aware of what was keeping me from getting up. Why am I not doing? Like I
Yeah.
know it. What's and so it is an action in and of itself It's just not what we would normally think of as one, to just notice, to just
Mhm.
become very aware of what's coming up. And the other part of that is to notice and believe the messages that come from other neural networks than your brain. Our
Mm.
brain's
Oh
super
my
active.
lord.
We're all familiar with the thoughts that churn.
Yeah.
One of the exercises I do to help people understand that is I have people sing a song in their head,
Mm.
and everyone while they're doing it will ultimately think about something else, right?
Mm.
Like, I'll at the end, I'll be like, "So how many of you are thinking, like, why are we doing this? It's a waste of time," or "This is really relaxing."
Mhm.
Like, you were thinking about something else while you were singing a song in your head. And that's because we can listen to our own thoughts. Like, we're not actually our thoughts. Our thoughts, our
Mm.
brain is giving us thoughts, it's giving us information, it's thinking about and telling us things. And it's easy to hear and understand our brain, our head brain, because it's got words
Mm.
and it's got the most neural networks. There's
Yeah.
billions of neurons in our head. There are We're more in like the 40 to 60,000 neurons in our heart brain. And so like our heart brain's similar. We use the analogy of a lobster. A lobster has about the same number of neurons as what we have
What?
in our heart. And a cat or a dog, depending on what science you look at, has about the same number of neurons that exist in our gut brain. And so our heart and our gut brains have a hard time competing with our head brains.
Yeah.
And so the start of wisdoming, the start of accessing, aligning, and applying our wisdoming is just accessing, right? Is just listening to what is, and we know that from wisdom practices or religion or other practices that have maybe told us that. There's lots out there on trusting your gut, and do you have a bad gut feeling, or how did your heart feel about that? There's lots of language around that, but recognizing that's not just like a religious thing that people say, but
Mhm.
actually
Mhm.
there are neurons in there that are trying to send you messages, but you've got to listen to them. And you've got to
Yes.
recognize that they're
Yes.
actual
Yes.
messages and
Yes.
information and data about what you're experiencing in the world that you want to consider or understand.
Oh my gosh, so good. Because right, that's where you just tune in a little bit and you're like, then you start to think, oh, because of course the achiever wants to just get one more thing, one more thing. Like we get so in that, again, that fight or flight mode of I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna be, and I'm gonna accomplish. And then but our bodies are screaming the answers and want us to listen, right? That is huge. It's so good,
Which,
Jessica.
to your point, our bodies are screaming. They get louder and louder the
Mhm.
less we listen.
Mhm.
My body got so sick when I was so stressed and burnt out because I wasn't listening. I
Yeah.
wasn't paying attention to what it needed. And
Mhm.
so when we're not paying attention, that's when the brain sends pain signals
Right. That's the
to
last
different parts of the body. And
scream
so
doctors.
you'll often hear, and this is again, this gets to all the well-being, right? It's our
Yeah.
being. Are you being well? Because
Yeah.
it's not necessarily, I don't in any way want to negate pain, because I experience a lot of pain and I appreciate pain so deeply. And it is medical pain. It is real. I
Mhm.
don't ever want to say it's not real, but but it can be put there by your brain can
Yeah.
send the message to the nerves to create pain so that you pay attention to something.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
and so that's the stiffness or
Yeah.
the discomfort we feel or the backache or the whatever. Our brain is sending signals to say, you need to do something different
Mhm.
because this isn't good. This isn't right.
Absolutely. And I think that they say like only 10% of what we feel is, or 10% is pain, right? 90% is all the other, the function of it. So our bodies are really freaking smart and amazing and know that, yeah,
So
just,
it's real. The pain is real. And it may
uh-huh.
be a message from your neural networks to pay attention to something.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the people I work with are somatic practitioners, they're naturopathic doctors, they're chiropractors. So they like one of my amazing girls, like her whole thing is pain's an invitation. What is it telling you? To really lean into, and that's her whole body of work. And she's like, "You people get mad, people get angry, people don't understand. They think it's happening to them." And she's, "But it's happening for you."
And that's the power of understanding the scientific side of
Mm,
that that we now know and understand. The research is the articles that are coming out, the research that's being published is exploding in our understanding of those neural signals, especially with like EEG devices that to measure brain waves and measure the different
mhm.
signals that are going throughout the body. We have such a better understanding now. And so understanding that and creating that awareness, I just think will lead to such better improved outcomes
Yeah.
than adding more programs,
Hmm.
systems, like, before we can get to those things, we have to help people with the tools of how to read their own messages.
Well, and I think because on our last episode, we talked about like the 2.5 minutes of breathing, right? What a good way and time to just check in. So, because don't listen to that one, go back and listen to that. Super good. But to really, I feel like that can just play onto this, right? Like the awareness of paying attention to what are we being told? Because at the end of the day, like we all want to show up as better humans, better moms, better wives, better workers, better bosses, right? So
And
I,
feel better.
yeah, then there's that. Yeah.
We actually want to be well. I used to actually so
Yeah.
this funny story is I used to hate the concept of well-being in the workplace.
Mm.
My team members, we've battled over how to message around well-being, what training we would do on it,
Yeah.
and I had such a struggle with it because it's so subjective and the models somehow indicate some sort of or often indicate some sort of balance or need to address these different elements or these different factors or and I struggled so much
Yeah.
to I appreciated the need for well-being. I wasn't negating that importance, but the method of getting there was always something I really struggled with intellectually and just to wrap my head around. And I think it's hard to extract it
Mhm.
from everything else we do. It's not a health and well-being. It's not a separate thing. It's us at the center of everything that we experience and do in our lives.
Yeah, and I think when you think about in our workplace, like we're in work mode, we're in get it done mode, we're in that, whew. So then like injecting something that's a fluff word or like something that feels like we should have a well-being program, but it comes back to your doing, not really being, right? So there's an incongruency. Yeah, it sounds good. Let's check it off the list, but when we actually sit in the space of what does it look like to be well for ourselves, right? Like we can't give the answer. And I bet like now knowing you more than I do, that's where your disconnect came from. Because you're like, they want to create a program or a system and something to tell you what to do and have the answer. And you're like, there's no freaking answer. There's actually, we can give you some tools or we can give you some ideas, but like it comes from within.
And I love programs and
Of
systems.
course.
I'm actually a programs and systems girl.
Yeah.
I like to put things into models, to use analogies.
What's your
My
brain
programs
doing?
are all built around how do I love 3 and 4-step things. I don't like 10-step things.
Mm,
I like how can I compact this so that it's easy for me to remember or that it's integrated in what I'm doing.
mhm.
And but when it comes to this well-being,
Yeah.
because our bodies are so complex, because we are so complex,
Yeah.
when we try to oversimplify it, I think that
Mhm.
we can do more harm than good, and we can imply to people that there's something they should be doing to fix their well-being,
Mm,
and that's not always the case. Especially, like, financial well-being, for example, which is a huge problem right now. There's a huge divide. There's tons of people that are in depression over their financial circumstance right now. Even people making good money are struggling or operating paycheck to paycheck in many cases. And that strain is not something that do some good financial planning, or let's
Mm,
put together a good um financial plan.
yeah.
I'm like blanking on the like budget, the a good budget, and look at everything. I'm not saying those things aren't good things to do again, but that almost places the like issue on like that people have to
Mhm.
do something more to fix it.
Yeah.
And they're if they're already struggling, doing something more feels like insurmountable.
Mhm. Literally. Yeah, absolutely. Again, always so good. And just I think, like, every time I hear well-being now, it's gonna be I'm gonna hear doing, not being. And just really, truly, like, how can we be in that space and what can we do? So to me, again, if we want somebody to apply this today, what do you think that we should have them walk away with today?
Spend more time in being
Mhm. Mhm.
rather than trying to do
Yeah.
more things.
Yeah.
Pay more attention to just being, and it feels so uncomfortable, and
Yeah.
I'm the first to admit it because I am a doer. I have a hard time not doing.
Yeah. Agree. Yeah.
One of my patterns that I'm working on with my coaches and the folks that
Mhm.
I work with is how do I learn how to be or how to relax without numbing? Because if I stop doing, I feel like I should be doing.
Right. It's
So
such a
so I'm pot calling kettle black here.
yeah.
I'm giving advice on stuff that I am working myself every single
That's
day.
part of being human. I feel
Yeah,
like I don't know many people that have mastered this one, right? Especially in our society in this age, and it's 2024, right? There's so much coming at us. And like we said last time, it's the great exhaustion, right? There's a reason for that. So I think this is where I love these conversations because we're not saying we have that, you have a lot of the science and the data, but we're all human. We're all working towards being better. And how do we do that? Perfect. Be.
being
Yeah.
and being with yourself and the
Yeah.
messages of yourself,
Mhm.
and I would also say being with others, not
Yes. Thank you for
doing,
saying
just
that.
being,
Yeah.
because 'cause you'll be surprised, especially if you have kids, if you're
Mhm.
just being,
Mhm.
the things they will tell you,
Yes.
the
Oh,
things that will come through because you're really present and you're just
mhm.
being there with them.
Absolutely. There's and I'm coming from the stage of being out of that. My youngest is 20 years old. So, like, I would do anything to go back. And there wasn't like cell phones when I first had them. So there's that whole, but there's a generation of we do. It's so easy to get distracted and not be, just not be. And I love that.
Don't
And
underestimate that your 20-year-old probably could still use you
oh,
just
no, I know.
being,
Oh, no. And
just being,
that's one of my favorite things. We take road trips. I feel like now I am way more try to be present with her than ever before because it's like bonus time. She's going to college here. She's at the community college, and I'm like, she's with me, and she's 20, and she wants to be with me, and it's like the best thing ever. So yeah, no, it is like magic. Of, but again, can I do more? Yeah, hell yeah, I love that too because you're like there's just time is so precious. So
mhm,
precious. And so I
yeah,
think we're not given, we're only here for a short time. So yeah, be present and make the moments of with people and not things and not our phones. And I think that's a beautiful,
so pay more attention to the being than the doing.
yeah.
When it comes to your well-being, spend more time being.
So
I
good.
think that's a good end.
I think it's a perfect end. Absolutely. And then I'd love to hear if people do this. I would love to hear what that meant and how they did it and
Yeah,
the impact that it had. That would make my heart so happy. So send us a message, DM, whatever that looks like, because I think this is the ripple effect of stuff that can make such a difference.
absolutely,
So good.
absolutely.